right. Welcome to another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. This is milestone kind of shit for us. We are starting our 9th year of the How I Met Your Mortgage podcast. We usually run about 40 or 45 episodes a year, take off some of the big holidays, my birthday, those kinds of, the really big holidays. And for us to be starting a 9th year of this is really cool. And for a special treat, we have our first guest of the year is a repeat guest, somebody you should all know and love. Mortgage originator, pig farmer, all-around rancher, dog lover, Kevin Boudreaux. Actually, I just love saying your name that way. You ever see the movie Blue Chips?
Yeah, with Shaq, right? Nick
Nolte? No. It's is it Shaq? Maybe no,
but it's basketball. It's Nick Nolte.
It's
right?
a basketball movie, and there's a character named Neon Boudreaux. Deaux, of course. It's French. He's from the Louisiana area. It's Creole.
He's a good boy. Then
is it Shaq? It might be Shaq that plays Neon.
It's been so long. I remember the movie with Nick Nolte.
But the way they introduce him as a player on the court over the in arena announcement, it just sounds so cool. And Boudreaux, it's
it always looks scary. Everybody messes it up, but the French are weird and they put 1,000 vowels to make one sound. So EAUX is O. So
are we gonna talk about the word Q? Because I only see the word Q.
Oh,
because I only see one valuable letter in that. Why Q is QUEUE.
Yeah, it's a lot. You're like, what?
Wow.
You could keep it real simple.
Yeah, there's a good example of how the French put words together. Q has one valuable letter in it and a lot of extra vowels. So, yeah, now you know the history of the Boudreaux name as well. There are a few important consonants and a lot of extra vowels.
Pretty much.
So, Kevin, I think that as our first episode of the year, and I booked it out this way intentionally because I know our audience is just dying to hear about peppermint.
Peppermint has gotten fat and doesn't ever come back in the house. I gave her the opportunity to be like an indoor-outdoor pig, right?
Indoor-outdoor pig. That's...
I gave her because she was indoors playing with the dog. She was part of the family. I took her outside to the farm and she's never looked back. So she's like a low rider though. She hasn't got very big as far as how long she is, but her belly actually hits the ground. It's like one of those Hondas that you lower ride and you can't go over a speed bump.
Go over the speed bumps. Got it.
That's Peppermint right now. That tummy is just dragging on the ground wherever she goes. She's slow. Doesn't have any zoomies anymore. She's just big, fat, and happy on the farm.
So she's my spirit animal.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I really don't have zoomies anymore either.
I tried to have some ups the other day. My ups are pretty bad for almost a 50-year-old man. I was like, man, did I even get an inch or two off the ground?
Yeah.
I was trying to grab something. I was like, man, getting old.
Why are things so much higher than they used to be? That's
it is.
Yeah. Actually, the one that bothers me the most is how much lower the ground seems. There are definitely items where I'll drop it and go, God, do I really need that, or can I just
circle back to it?
Yeah, I'm gonna put a pin in that and come back and pick it up later. All right, so let's talk about the last year, the coming year, when it comes to the mortgage space, because it's been an interesting run. I think a couple of things were really, really fascinating, and we'll see what this shakes out for as far as 2026 goes. But we knew close to a year ago that we went from something close to 1 million active federal mortgage licenses on the street, peak of the pandemic kind of shit, down to less than 100,000 that renewed for 2025. I've got to expect that number dwindles even a little more for 2026. I never hear tale about a new mortgage originator. And I know the bar is pretty high. The exam is difficult. I do know of people who have failed the exam 3 times. Is that the limit? And then you got to wait a year to take it.
I think so.
I think if you fail
It's
the
3
federal
times 60
exam
days or something, and then you got to go back and
start all over.
Hey, you're not serious. Get out of here.
Okay. But there hasn't been a 90% drop in the volume of people that want to borrow money, that need to borrow money, that are going to borrow money. And I think of equal importance is the fact that we still see an awful lot of margin compression. And when we talk about mortgage banks, wholesale mortgage lenders, all of these tertiary, well, not even tertiary, but secondary levels that are eventually going to have to get their shit insured by Fannie, by Freddie, by FHA, by USDA, whatever the case, by VA. They don't have the wiggle room to not cross a T or dot an I. They cannot afford to get caught holding a loan. They can't get a single loan where Fannie Mae says, nah, not for us. We're going to kick it back to you, because they don't have the money. So now the process of getting loans done, getting loans approved, filing everything in, especially with AML, those kinds of things, has become twice as much work as it used to be. So now we've got twice as many transactions, and everyone, just because there aren't enough people to do what you and I do. And we've got twice as much work on each transaction because of the nature of what goes on in mortgage banking, mortgage brokering, these kinds of things. It's been 2025 was wild.
I think I found every weird scenario you could possibly have as a consumer, and a lot of them I was able to help, with some creative,
Sure.
thinking. But man, I felt like we're just like the people that are able or willing to buy, and some of them aren't able but willing to buy right now. A lot of people are just sitting on the sidelines, but the ones who are have like the weirdest things could possibly imagine. It's a different market as an originator. You have to be, a lot of people like to focus on one type of like a niche, right? You have a niche.
Sure.
You're a
We used to
VA
say
guy,
that you're the riches are in
construction
the niche.
guy.
Yep.
You really can't be right now, because you're going to get, in 1 week you'll have a clean VA client, the next, and then later you'll have a renovation loan, then you'll have a reverse, then you'll have a 500 FHA, has the money down, needs a manual underwrite. Then you'll have a self-employed 1 year,
the bank statement loan,
yeah,
and the
bank statement,
DSR loan.
DSCR.
Yep.
You're going to literally have a little bit of everything all the time. And you got to know all these different programs that you may not have known or ever really dealt with, in the past. So it's definitely a different clientele, different segment of the population that is getting financing from the normal. I'm hoping 2026 we get a little bit back to the normal, if rates dwindle down a little bit more. Some of these people sitting on, 4s and 5s that don't like their house might get out, but the 2s and 3s are probably stuck there a while longer, unless they have a divorce, unless they have something that forces them to move.
Yeah, I think that's true. There's certainly a lot of that. And obviously, we've been talking about those golden handcuffs for all the people that have, a 2 and 3% mortgage rate for years now. And yeah, there's a really wide gamut of loan products that you guys all need to know, which has really complicated a lot of different things. You got to have a lot of sharp tools. There's no question. And I think a lot of that is just the byproduct of the fact that there aren't enough people doing what we do anymore. There just aren't. No, you never hear about a new loan originator, and we know that we've already had at least a 90% drop in people that can do what we do on a national level in the last year or two. They may have quit, in the beginning of 2025, and we're not going to figure it out until later this month. But I do think that that's a big, big piece of the puzzle, is having a wider knowledge base of all the different programs that are out there, whether it's non-QM shit or USDA or VA or Fannie or Freddie or Ginnie or bank statements or 1 year of self-employment or 1 year of tax. I mean, all these different things that we need to have a working knowledge of so that we can take care of the people. Because that guy that only did bank statement loans, knew everything about bank statement loans, he's not doing loans at all anymore. He's doing something else. And even you and I know people that were really good at this and really enjoyed doing it and just couldn't tolerate the frustration in it anymore. Yep. It just became difficult when it came to the transactions. It became difficult in dealing with the consumers. And if you don't love what you do, how long are you going to put up with doing it before you figure that out or find something else
Well, if
to
you
do?
don't love it or you don't feel like you get a reward out of it, and you're just in it for the money, the last couple of years, the money isn't what it used to be.
That's
Nowhere
not why you're
close.
doing it, right? Yeah, the
So
last
at
couple
this
of years, the
point,
people that are doing it pretty much love doing it.
or we're gluttons for punishment, one or the other.
It could, yeah, okay. There might be some of the latter. We're not going to go too deep on that subject, but yeah, it's really a very different space when it comes to lending, when it comes to originating loans, and you briefly touched on what you think 2026 is going to look like, but tell us more. What do you think is coming down the pipe these next 12 months, or are we at
Honestly,
360 days?
I don't trust the government to do anything that would help us. So let's start there.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of people are saying,
angle.
hey, once the Fed, we have a new Fed chairman, he's going to be more favorable. But, what people don't realize, most people don't, is, the Fed has no actual control of mortgage rates. Yes, normally when they're cutting, usually our rates will come down, but it depends on so many other factors. What is the anticipation of inflation,
it
the
has
job
an impact,
market?
but it has an impact on everything in the global economy.
Yep.
I do think it's important for people to understand that, yes, the Fed deals in short-term rates. You're going to see breaks on your credit cards, maybe on your car loans, that kind of thing. Your HELOCs.
Yep.
You're doing
Anything tied to
traditional
prime will be,
HELOCs.
better. We'll continue to have some drops, nothing major in my opinion, but
I don't think it'll be anything major. If we dropped a full point over the course of 26, I'd be surprised.
I'd be happy with that. To me, that would be a pretty good place to be going into 2027.
Yeah, but I do think it's important for everybody to understand, because obviously not everybody watching or subsequently listening to our podcast here is in the mortgage space. But I do think it's important that everybody understand that while it has an impact, the mortgage-backed securities market is private. It's not a government entity. It's not a government agency. You can buy securities if you want to invest in securities. By all means, go for it. Whoever you are, you can trade on the free market. And that we're very, very preemptive, as private markets are typically going to be more so than any kind of a government entity. So what people don't really realize is that if we highly suspect that the Fed's going to move rates, and it's usually fairly predictive or predictable, that the Fed's going to lower rates, then the couple of weeks leading up to that, mortgage rates are going to go down, probably quite a bit, more than you would expect. And then let's say the Fed lowers a quarter. Well, that day, mortgage rates are probably going to rebound some and go up back to what would be in line with whatever the Fed is doing. And the opposite is true as well. If the Fed's raising rates, mortgage rates will probably go up a little bit in a week or two.
I tell everybody,
and then correct.
The market's already predicted whether they're cutting or not, and they're pretty darn accurate. So, the rates are usually better up until, and what's more important than actual cutting or not cutting is, what does Doofus come on the microphone and say about what's happening, or how likely another cut is coming? And that plays more into what the reaction is of the market than anything, is how the words he says, what he's conveying about the future,
or she,
the market's waiting
he
for.
Or she. Let's make sure that Kevin is describing Chairman Doofus as
yes, it could be a she, but right now it's a he.
And previous Doofus we've ever had. Yes, no question about it.
It could be anybody, whoever the doofus is that gets up there and messes my day up.
That's where the doofuses come from. Absolutely. So I do think that this trend will continue. I think the pendulum is swinging, albeit slowly, and probably as slow as I've really seen as far as major changes go over the course of, God, I've been doing this forever, 25 years now, more. I do continue to think that rates will continue to come down. I think it's going to be slower than we've probably ever seen. They're obviously way down from where they peaked, which was like October of 22?
Yes, somewhere around there.
And we were talking about mortgage rates at 7.5. And today the perfect scenario is probably like 5.5. So it's really kind of about perspective. Okay. Don't get me wrong. I think if we actually had a healthy economy, and I don't think we do, I think the pieces of it that appear that way are still just a paper tiger. They look fierce, but you can punch a hole right through them.
A big time.
Okay.
Don't
right,
get me started on any of the data that the government
right.
actually releases to the market to react to, because it's
Oh,
inconsistencies and revisions and
and we move the goal line
all the time.
All the time. It's just insane. So if we had a healthy economy, I think the negligible, slow appreciation of where the real estate is appropriate. I think the place we're at right now with mortgage rates is appropriate. I do think that we're going to continue to see those change a little again. Rates come down a little, appreciation go up a little, these kinds of things. But like with all these things where there's a pendulum swinging back and forth, at times it's violent. Like if we talk about what went on with mortgage rates at the beginning of the pandemic, if we talk about the correction that the real estate market had over the last year or two in major metropolitan areas here like Denver, definitely took a beating.
Florida took a beating.
I'm sure.
A beating, but we went up so fast after COVID that, of course we were going to get hit pretty hard. I mean, it makes sense.
Was there any appreciation there the last couple of few years?
No, you were back to like 2022 levels. Anyone that bought in the last couple of years are pretty much upside down trying to sell. I'm not saying every neighborhood, every house, but a majority of them. My house is down based on AVMs and value internet about $100,000. So it's not fun. But
I think I took a bigger beating than that. Although some of it is a nearby neighbor with a near identical floor plan and frankly a much more recent overhaul updating. I think they sold like $200,000 below the peak of my tax assessment.
And of course, they're slow to come down on that, by the way.
Yeah, no shit, right? Absolutely. Yeah, we will absolutely be contesting that the next time it comes. Although we did at that point too, and they did agree with me that they had overassessed it. I think they'd overassessed it by I don't know, $100,000, $150,000, and they said, yeah, we overassessed it by $20,000. You're right. Like, okay, very nice. Thank you so much, county. But neither here nor there, because everybody should probably know that appraised values and assessed values are always going to be different. And all that you really want, just to be on the safe side, is to make sure that your appraised value would be higher than your assessed value. Just you want to be paying as little in property tax as possible, and you obviously want to make sure you're milking that to a point where it's good for your income tax. Those kinds of things. There's just obviously a lot of moving
Adam, do you think it's going to go anywhere? I mean, I know Florida's kind of leading the way on getting rid of property taxes, at least for primary homes. There, maybe there's going to be an age limit, or if, you're in your house this amount of time, we're working on the details, right? Which are very important, but they're really adamant on getting, which will help the affordability in Florida, by the way, because we were never a high cost state, but after COVID, we're up there with some of the highest, especially with insurance costs. So we need to get something positive to rebound for sure. Do you think in the next year or two there's going to be something maybe nationwide? I mean, what do you think?
For real estate tax, I can't see how that comes to pass anytime soon. And obviously on a state-by-state basis, we do see other benefits. There's essentially a property tax freeze in California. It is what it is when you bought the property, and that's what it will stay until you sell the property. Here in Colorado, we do have a couple of breaks. We do have a homestead break. So if you're over a certain age and you've been in your house for 10 years or more, it's at least half off. That's certainly a big one. But for where we are and where you are, I think the bigger issue has got to be the insurance.
Yeah. Insurance is crazy right now.
Well, and yeah, if we go back and look at CPI data for every time it's released for the last couple of few years, I mean, literally one of the top things that's impacting the consumer's pocketbook, your pocketbook, my pocketbook, is property and casualty insurance, homes and cars. Now, private industry, I think it's a little dirty. P&C insurance world. In fact, I think every industry that has to kind of suffer at the hands of the P&C world, whether it's houses, cars, body shops, whatever it is, if there's an insurance policy involved, your extended warranty on your car, even, that's just an insurance policy. The job is to deny claims. That's the job, right? It's about profit. It's about shareholders. It's about capitalism at its ugliest root. Okay. So if we look at the consumer price index data in recent years, and pretty much every single time we see it, property and casualty insurance is insane. Now, when you live in a place like Florida, where hurricanes are a big deal, when you live in a place like Colorado, where fire and hail are a big deal, these kinds of things. Hell, we had a mild tornado breeze past my house in recent years, and that shit doesn't happen in the urban corridor. But we're not going to talk about climate change. That's a totally different subject. But I was fairly lucky. No major damage, didn't lose any trees. Neighbors 3, 4, 5 houses down the street didn't get that lucky. And I still spent 40 grand of the insurance company's money on a roof and paint and siding and outdoor lighting and fencing and deck railing and on and on. I mean, every light I had on the outside of my house was gone. It was in a neighbor's yard somewhere down the block, I'm sure. Those kinds of things. So if we're going to continue to live in areas where we have high-risk climate issues, Florida, Colorado, California, those fires were absolutely devastating.
Insane.
In the LA area. God, when was that? Last year?
January. Yeah, it was like New Year's. It started right around New Year's of last year. Yeah.
Okay. You know full well that I've got a house on the East Coast that's in Hurricane L. I've really only had to deal with one, and it wasn't all that big a deal. You know, the beach was in the pool. That was expected. There were some HOA additional assessments. All the houses had to be repainted, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think that's going to continue to be a bigger issue than the property tax. But can we figure out how to generate a more universal property tax situation and figure out where it's more reasonable for the 65-year-old versus the 35-year-old, the $1 million home versus the $200,000 condo? I don't know. I mean,
it'd be great.
The logic is
come up with something that makes sense. But you know, if the government's involved, it probably won't be the best. But anything would be good, even whatever the rules are. You know, hey, you have something to shoot for, whether it's 10 years in the house, or you pay off your mortgage and you don't owe taxes again, or honestly, people with no kids, there's a lot of young people with no kids are paying property taxes for the schools. But the problem is too, there's a lot of local waste at the government level. Like, Florida has a huge surplus. That's why they're talking about this. And they're probably going to come in with some kind of tax for, consumption tax or, tourist tax or whatever. They'll probably find a way to make the money back, which is great for the homeowners that are here and living in Florida. But it's hard. You're not going to make everyone happy, and there's going to be some rules and there's going to be some regulation, but hopefully they can come up with something that just is pretty simple, makes sense, and helps people save money, at the end of the day. Because if you're going to be here a long time, it is your primary home. You shouldn't be paying taxes on forever. It's crazy. You're 85 and you're still paying all this property taxes.
And an exorbitant amount.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And this may be a conversation for a totally separate episode, and we'll do that. We'll get you back on the books for another one here down the road. I gotta suspect that we'll see some kind of easing in general tax issues, state level, local level, this kind of thing, as we seem to be going down a road where we're going to adopt a federal legalization of marijuana. Because I can't believe it's been as long as it has. The tax revenue is undeniable. In Colorado, and we were first, Jay, the tax revenue, the way that the laws were written is that the tax revenue would hit a surplus limit. And when it hit that limit, the remaining tax revenue would go to surrounding states' law enforcement to help them prevent people coming to Colorado and buying their weed and then going back to Kansas or Nebraska or Wyoming or whatever. And there was a surplus beyond that. We actually all got to vote, right? 5 million taxpayers got to vote on whether or not that money was going to come back to us. Now, it wasn't a lot of money at that point. It was like $15 per taxpayer. And the people did vote to just let the state keep it or put it into this fund or whatever, the schools, roads, whatever. These are the things that obviously need that kind of help. So that's why we need the property tax to begin with. We need the schools to operate the fire stations, to operate the roads, to not destroy our cars every time we stick the key in the ignition. So maybe we start to have this gross amount of tax revenue from something like that on a federal level, which gives us the opportunity on a state-by-state basis to ease up on other taxes like property tax. I don't know. And we could be telling tales that'll only come to fruition.
I mean, there's definitely solutions if they try, you know. There's
we have to try?
If they try, you know. And if they can agree, you know, everyone wants to fight about everything nowadays.
There's a lot of
let's
that.
come up with a solution that we can all live with that's acceptable for the majority. I mean, again, there's extremes on both sides that you're never going to appease anyway. So let's go for the average person that has a little common sense and is out there busting their butt, paying for all these different things and having their quality of life definitely coming down with all the cost of everything being so high. Because that's honestly, in my opinion, that's one of the biggest reasons people aren't buying as much. Is it's not the cost of it's not the interest rate. Interest rate is one little piece of it.
Yep.
The problem is your car insurance has doubled in the last 5 years.
The cost of the car itself doubled.
Their grocery bill has doubled. Your cell phone bill has mostly gone up 30-40%. Your electric bill has gone up 40-50%.
Heating,
so
power,
living,
cable,
just
internet,
breathing and surviving has doubled.
It costs twice as much. Can't leave the house without dropping a C note.
So even if rates are 3 or 4%, I think it would be a better market, of course. And I would not be, I would be very happy if we get to that point again at some point. But honestly, there's so much more and so many other issues right now that COVID created and the aftermath of COVID and all these shortages and all the corporate
materials,
record corporate
greed.
Profits.
Yep.
I feel like the old guy, Adam. I walk in the grocery store. I'm like, that's $9. That was $4 5 years ago. My wife's like, shut up. It's $9 now. I'm like, no, it's not.
And you kids get off my lawn.
Exactly. I feel like that, man. But it's not like 20 years ago, right? Where we're disconnected. It's literally 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that was half the price. So yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing. And I don't know when that is gonna, until we stop spending money at these corporations that are ripping us off, like as people, as Americans, and stop giving them our money and letting them take it, they're gonna have to come down in prices. But the only way we can beat them is with our pocketbook.
Yeah, you're talking about typical supply and demand kind of stuff.
I can't tell.
No question about it. But you're also talking about the organizations that might very well be driving the political climate anyway. Or you're talking about some of the entities that are going to be part of some of the biggest lobbies that are going to have some of the biggest dollars, whether it's petroleum, pharmaceuticals. I mean, I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to kind of see if we can't all work together and figure some of that out. I do also think it's important to describe the fact that at least while the cost of everything has gone up, eating out, buying a car, keeping your lights on, at least the quality has all gone way down.
Oh, the sizes too. You're paying more for less. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty wild what has gone on in the last 5 years. I seem to recall, and I knew that there was kind of an onset of this sort of an economic climate coming when some of the costs, and I actually did acquire and lease a brand new vehicle during the pandemic, which was impossible to get. There was an issue with computer chips. They couldn't get the vehicle built, these kinds of things. And the story was that there were not enough people on the loading docks. And I can't remember what that union is called. There's a specific term.
The longshoremen?
The longshoremen, thank you. On both coasts to unload all the materials that were coming into the country and that these giant cargo ships were just having to sit and float offshore. Now, of course, that wasn't really true. These were the corporations using that as a supply and demand method to drive prices up. And I remember the federal government having to step in and say, well, how about we just fine you $100 per container per day until you get it unloaded. And then all of a sudden things were getting unloaded. Now that didn't help the prices because we had already inflated.
That's what I told everybody. I was like, okay, they're going to inflate it. And some of it maybe they had some valid reasons. Maybe there weren't. Who knows? Right? Maybe it's all a game. But at the end of the day, it seemed like there was valid reasons. But once someone's charging you $40 for something instead of $25, what's their incentive to go back to 25 or 30 or 35 if we're still paying 40? That's the problem.
Well, and let's also understand that whatever that product is that was 25 and is now 40, the cost to get that product to market has also gone up.
It has.
There's
but not as much as
cycle of this corporate greed. Now we're just adding on and adding on and adding on. So yeah, I agree. I think the general cost of goods, the general cost of services, the general cost of living is having an enormous impact on whether or not somebody wants to tie themselves into a $3,000 a month mortgage on a $200,000 condo.
And unfortunately, it all goes back to our dollar being tied to nothing. You know, there's no gold standard.
You want to go back? I knew you were going to say that.
You know, there's no sound money. The Austrians were right. And the idiots that have been in charge for 100 plus years have taken away all our purchasing power. Like 99% of the purchasing power since 1913 has evaporated. But it used to evaporate slowly. At 2% inflation, you don't notice it until it's 30, 40 years later. When we're getting double digits, 7, 6, 7, 8, even 10% in real inflation, right? Not the numbers they give us, but what's been happening in the last 5 years, you feel it, and you feel it quick. And who I feel really sorry for is that next generation, like my kids. I got two 20-year-olds. Yeah, man, if something doesn't change, I don't know how they're going to buy a house at a young age, you know, like we did, or get married and have kids at a young age. Like everything that we kind of go through in life, they're probably going to have to put the brakes on it or push it out further because the cost of everything is so high. So it's scary. I mean, I'm always hopeful. I'm hoping 2026, some good things happen and we can build upon it. But I'm also a realist. Until our money is tied to something besides our Department of War, you know, it's not sound for us, you know, and it doesn't hold its value. Unfortunately, it holds it better than a lot of countries' currency.
Yep.
But fiat is like monopoly money. We've all agreed to trade in it, and look where it's got us. So that's a whole different conversation. But you know, I had to throw it out there because that is a problem, and that needs to be fixed somehow at some point in the next future for our future generations.
Well, and yeah, you and I can have a more in-depth economic discussion, debate, conversation the next time we do this. I certainly want to throw out there that, like the fake data, the false numbers, whatever we're being told, that was true even prior to the pandemic, and we were actually falsely suppressing inflation. We weren't getting 2 to 3% a year. In fact, if we had been, things would probably cost about what they would today. But since we all got slapped with 10% overnight kind of thing, it feels very, very different.
Yeah.
So
it was dramatic. It's dramatic effect for sure.
Well, we've done
they bleed us slowly. You know, it's like they turn up the temperature of the water just 1 or 2 degrees at a time. We don't feel it.
You never know you're boiling.
You blast that thing on full blast, you're going to feel it real quick. So.
Welcome to adulthood. And yes, I have 2 adult children, and I do feel for what the future holds for them and feel awful for what we're leaving them. That may be part of this Gen X thing, being the caretaker generation, being the forgotten generation. I think the boomers knew what they were leaving. They just didn't care. Unfortunately, I think we were kind of born into an era where we know it's a shit show and we care. Yeah, we just lack some tools to put it back on the track. But I'm going to end on this little note because it's always seemed very important to me that the first thing we have to do to get out of a hole is stop digging. And
Yes.
I think that's where the problem lies. We just can't stop digging. So,
It's a great
well,
starting.
Kevin, I know you've had all kinds of shit going on today, and it sounds like there may have even been some car trouble.
Yeah, wife's car. We took it in for an oil change. She leaves for work. I see a big puddle of oil. So someone didn't do their job right. So I got to go switch cars with her, bring it back to the dealership and say, hey, buttheads, check the oil. You didn't tighten something correctly.
Yeah, we're missing a plug. We're missing a filter. We
Something's not quite tight enough. You're a little,
Yeah.
you used your wussy hands and you didn't use strong, manly hands to get it tight. I don't know.
Okay. And for those of you that experience that, I'm going to give Kevin this tip too. Oven cleaner.
Okay.
Spray that oil spot with your oven cleaner.
I heard cat litter's good.
Well, that'll absorb what's on the surface. But to get the stain out, oven cleaner. I know.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Adam. I learned something new today.
All right, we did get a nugget out of this. For those of you watching or listening, you get all kinds of negative economic information and opinions that we pretty much think it's a dumpster fire and we are sans fire extinguisher for the moment. But if you have an oil stain in your driveway, hit that with some oven cleaner, and that'll be your best route to get that cleaned up. So, now we're going to shift the podcast to How I Met Your Mortgage and general automotive tips from Adam and Kevin. All right, Kevin, thank you. I know you've got a busy day already, so I appreciate you carving out the time to make this happen. And for the rest of you watching or listening live or in syndication, welcome to a new season of How I Met Your Mortgage. We do have some interesting guests this year. You can pretty much catch us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern Monday mornings for most of you, or barely into the afternoon in the Eastern time zone. And you can catch the podcast itself on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify the following Wednesday. Kevin, I love you. Thanks for doing another episode with us. We'll get another one on the books for sometime down the road. And with that, I'm going to let the rest of you go and have a wonderful day. For all the things I never turned on the banner, shame on me. Jen's probably going to let me have some shit.
She's going to let you hear it.
So there you go. It's on now if you're watching. If you're listening, live or in syndication, check out justthetipscoaching.com for all things JTT, including other episodes of How I Met Your Mortgage, the weekly little tip, the book Just the Tips, and all the other jazz. With that, Kevin, thank you. For the rest of you watching or listening live or in syndication, have a great week, and we'll see you next time.